Who's coming to the desert? How many of you are going to be coming down to the desert and enjoy your first year on the road as a snowbird? Or maybe you're coming to the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous for the first time and you have no idea what to expect living in the desert. Well, my name is Carolyn and this is my RV life, and this will be my third year in the desert, and today I'm going to take you on a nature walk in the desert and show you what life is like as a van dweller, as a full-time RVer, as a resident of the desert. Probably millions of snowbirds come down to the Southwest for the winter to escape the brutal cold temperatures of the north. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about what life is like in the desert. Today we're going to go on a nature walk, and I'm going to show you exactly what to expect out here. We're going to talk about wildlife, we're going to talk about snakes, we're going to talk about spiders, we're going to talk about cactus, we're going to talk about what the landscape looks like, we're going to talk about what you need to stay safe and healthy, and what your pets need to stay safe and healthy in the desert while you're down here. And stay tuned to the very end, because I'm going to talk about the real threat to your pets out here, and it's not what you might think. The real threat to your pet isn't something that just lives in the desert, it's something more common than that. And from experience and from stories of other people who've been out here, the real threat is not something that you probably are even considering. All right, so let's get started. First of all, let's look at the terrain. Before I started coming down to the desert every winter to live in my RV, I used to dream about backpacking in the desert, and I always imagined like Sahara type desert, right? Rolling brown sand dunes, the smooth wind-swept sand, but that's not at all what it's like down here. Sure, there are some sand dunes, but you kind of have to go out of your way to find them, and they're like monuments and parks. But mostly what you're gonna find here is rock. Just like this, and this is what you're going to drive on. This is most of the time. There are some sandy spots, but I'm thinking like the Quartzsite, Arizona area, the Ehrenberg, Arizona, where a lot of people make their winter pilgrimage. It's mostly like this. What you might find really surprising is how smooth it is. This is called desert concrete because over time it has eroded in such a way that it has become flat. It almost looks like concrete and cement, and you can drive on it. It's not like super I was gonna say it's not super rocky. It's rocky, but it's got a smooth finish. It's even kind of shiny. And from a distance, it almost looks like crushed rock, concrete, or pavement. And this is usually pretty okay for dogs to walk on. It's okay for humans to walk on. Capone never had a problem walking on this. And I'm going to talk about dogs and dog safety out here because there are a few things that you're going to want to be aware of for dogs. But for the most part, Capone had no problems out here. If you have an indoor dog who only goes outside 3 times a day in a manicured soft lawn to pee, they are going to struggle out here. But Capone was an outdoor dog, always was an outdoor dog. He spent a lot of time outdoors on a lot of different terrain, a lot of different ground cover, and living out here, his paws toughened up just like a human's paws would toughen up, or human's feet would toughen up, right? He got tough, calloused paws, and he never had a problem out here on this. He never limped, he never seemed sore, and I didn't worry about him walking on this. And like I said, this is pretty smooth. I don't really think most dogs would have a problem walking on this. It's not sharp, it's not going to poke their paws. Okay, so that's desert concrete. However, in some areas of the desert, and you're going to want to have to look around for yourself, there isn't any here, but sometimes little tiny cactus grow up from this desert concrete. I mean, they're little itty bitty. They're like probably like this big, and they're not super painful, but they're prickly. So you step on them, it's kind of like not quite as bad as stepping on like a blackberry bush, but they poke a little bit. And they don't come up, so they're not gonna like get stuck in between a dog's paws. I don't even think the little pricklies on those get stuck in your skin, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. But just be aware that you don't want to walk around barefoot when those are present. And you'll know if you walk barefoot a lot of the times like I do, you're going to know right away if you've got those in the area because you're going to step on them and they're going to go, ow. Capone never had a problem with those, as far as I know. You know, I mean, you can tell with a dog. Capone would go like this, Mom, got something in my paw. and he would stand there and wait until I came and took out whatever was in his paw. And he never really had a problem down here with the little tiny cactus in the desert concrete. All right, so that's the landscape. If you're going to Arizona, if you're going to the quartzite area, it's pretty much what you're gonna find. Yeah, you know what, sometimes you're gonna find sand, so you're gonna wanna be careful driving in sand. I'm gonna cover, you know, you don't ever wanna camp in a wash. A wash looks like a dry riverbed, basically. It could be sand, it could be rock, it could be both. And you don't ever want to camp in one of those. This is a perfect example of a wash that you might be tempted to drive down as you're looking for camping, because I've been all along this road and the dirt piles from the grading are too high that even places that look like they might be good camping spots, I can't do the clearance on them because I have to go over this big, there's a word for it, right? The pile of snow or dirt on the side of the road from grading or plowing. And so you come across this and you're like, oh my gosh, it's big, wide open space, and look at that, I should be able to drive down there and find camping. No, not unless you're in a four-wheel drive, because as you can see, there's tons of tire tracks, but these are four-wheel drive tire tracks. People go four-wheeling in washes because they're fun if you have a four-wheel drive. So for one couple reasons you don't want to camp down here, you don't want to drive down there. Number one, it's a wash and they can get flash flooding and you can get washed out, so that's first. But this time of year, when you're down here in the winter, the biggest consideration or the biggest problem with this is, look at how deep the sand is. Yeah, I wouldn't drive in this. I have, and I've gotten stuck, but you definitely do not want to drive in this. It's, look at, I don't know if you can, if the camera's going to pick up, this is really, really deep sand, and unless you have a four-wheel drive, you're going to get stuck in here. Right here on the side of the wash might be a good place to camp. Actually, I'm pulled up over here, but yeah, you could camp right here, but you definitely do not want to drive in a wash. You're going to get stuck, and, you know, and you also have the potential for flash floods. But they're beautiful places to hike. I hike in a lot of washes this time of year. In the winter, I don't have to worry about flash floods. I think it's normally during the monsoon season that you really have to worry about it. But it's always a good idea to keep an eye on the weather anyway. If there's going to be rain, and even, you know, within 100 miles, a couple hundred miles, if there's going to be a huge rainstorm, you're going to want to avoid the washes. I would. But yeah, this is a wash. And wash is basically just where water runs from the mountains during heavy rains. And it takes the water chooses the path of least resistance, right? And that's usually a low-lying area, and it brings rock and sand and silt with it, and that's why the washes are so sandy. This is a really, really sandy one. Oftentimes they're filled with rock and sand, and sometimes the sand can be a little more compacted. If you're ever don't know, if you're unsure about driving on anything, get out and walk in it first. And what I normally do, I'll put my foot in and I'll say, okay, how deep is it before I get to something solid? And for this, you know, what is that? It's too much. I don't know, 6 inches? No, and I'm still burying my foot in. If I only go a couple inches down before I get to solid earth, I might drive on it. But if it's 4, 5, 6 inches, no way, I'm not going to drive on it. And a wash, as I started to say, a wash can be 2 inches wide. It can be miles wide. There are washes out here that are miles, maybe a mile wide. I've seen some pretty big washes. And, yeah, just no camping zones. I would just say wash, unless you have a four-wheel drive and you can drive down them. Even then, I don't know. Well, yeah, you might be able to find good camping. This one is a rock canyon. But in some of the flatter areas, Quartzsite, Ehrenberg area, you might be able to, if you have a four-wheel drive, you might be able to drive down a wash and find good camping. But for most people, I would not recommend driving in a wash. And again, a wash is where water runs when it rains. And in the Ehrenberg, Quartzsite area, like I said, there's a lot of rocks. You'll actually see some vegetation. You'll see cactus, and you'll see the Palo Verde trees and all kinds of stuff. So they can be really pretty. Some parts of the Southwest, here in Arizona, for example, you're not going to find, well, at least in this part of Arizona, near Tucson, you're not going to necessarily find a whole lot of desert concrete. But what you're going to find is compacted sand. And most of the time, this is okay to drive on. Where am I looking? Sometimes it can also get soft in the rain. If you're here during the heavy rains, it can get soft and loosen up. And as you can see here, can you see that? you know, it can get soft and there's a chance you might get stuck. But I'm down here in the winter and I'm not worried about getting stuck at all. In fact, look at this camping spot. I have it all to myself. It's pretty beautiful. And so this is really compacted sand. The road I came out on was graded, actually, so it was really compacted sand. There were some rutted parts where water flows through during the rainy season, during the monsoon season. But for the most part, this is really packed in sand. And I'm on a very well-traveled road. This is a very well-traveled area. There's actually a trailhead. So I wasn't too concerned about coming out here. It's when I'm exploring roads that don't get a lot of traffic that I worry about, because sometimes the tire tracks don't necessarily mean that it's safe for me. There's a lot of four-wheel drive roads and things like that. But this is very compacted. Let me show you. See, I can't even really dig down. So no problems at all driving on this. Until you get used to the landscape, until you are, you spend some time down here, a couple seasons, you may not even want to go for hikes in washes. I think I've become pretty good at identifying active washes versus not active washes. The washes that I do walk in this time of year look like they haven't had any water activity in decades. So, but I wouldn't recommend doing that if this is your first time down here. If this is your first time down here, stay on high ground. And, just if you have a dog and you're worried about the dog, get out and test the ground yourself. Go around, walk around barefoot if you're worried about it. And if you are really worried about it, then get your dog some booties. Dogs hate booties, but if that's what you feel you need to do it. All right, so that's desert concrete. A couple other cactus that you're going to need to be aware of out here that for pets and for yourself, but mostly I'm thinking about pets. One is the cholla cactus. It's really kind of a cute, pretty little cactus, but it sheds these little balls of hell. They are 360 degree all the way around pricklies that you barely have to touch, and they get embedded in your skin and they're really hard to get out. And Capone and I had a fight with a cholla bush a couple years ago, and it was not pretty. It was really bad. So you might also want to consider, if you're going for a hike, and if you have a dog, to maybe take a pair of pliers with you just in case your dog runs into one of those. Capone did run into one of those and I had nothing. You can't grab it because it embeds in your skin, and it's really, they get embedded, so you really have to yank it out and you really need a good grip on it, and that's going to hurt your hand. I ended up having to roll my jacket around a couple of times to pull it out of Capone, and he's jumping and it's hurting, and oh, it was terrible. It broke my heart. And then I ended up getting one in my butt and falling on my butt, and he ended up getting another one, and it was pretty bad. So you're going to really need to be aware of the cholla, and not just the bush, but they shed the balls on the ground. And if you're going to be taking your dog like I did, and this was in Kofa Wildlife Refuge south of Quartzsite and north of Yuma is really, really bad for these. And I decided to take Capone off a road and off a trail and go kind of traipsing cross country, and that's where we ran into them. They were really bad. They were all over the ground. And if you have a dog, you're really going to need to be careful and keep your eye out for those, because they can be painful. And Capone ended up having one in his groin, and it was just, it was bleeding a little bit when I found it. Was terrible, and it just broke my heart. And be aware of the cholla cactus. Those, I think, are probably the most troublesome. They're the most challenging to deal with, and they do get stuck in you really easy, and they are painful. There's also the barrel cactus, which is, you can't miss it, and unless you bump into those aren't really going to hurt you. The pricklies can be a little bit prickly, but not too bad. I've never had a quill from a barrel cactus stuck in me. Well, then again, I've never fallen on one or anything. Yucca is one that you're really going to have to be careful about. I brushed up against a yucca not too long ago, and what happened? The tips are so sharp that I actually got punctured and bled a little bit. And, it hurts a little bit, but it's not going to kill you. It's just a little bit of a poke. And so that's the yucca. You're going to need to watch out for it. Of course, in Arizona, you have the Sororo cactus, but you'd have to be blind to run into one of those and get hurt by one of those. And, of course, you want to leave them alone. You don't want to chop them down or anything. You just really want to leave them alone. Stand next to it, take a picture. But yeah, like I said, unless you're running full blast into one of those, they're not going to hurt you, and a dog, they're not going to, you know, a dog's not going to run into it, so it's not going to hurt a dog either. Right, and you see this really cool tree behind me with the green trunks? I wanted to call it a gum tree when I first got here. I mean, gum, I don't know, green gum fun. I don't know, it just seemed like a gum. Is a gum tree green? It might be. But this is not a gum tree. This is a, what's it called? A blue Palo Verde tree. And I guess in the spring, it gets flowers and leaves on it. But this time of year, all that's left are pricklies. Pricklies, pricklies, pricklies. And if you rub up against them, like I do sometimes when I'm hiking, they can stab you a little bit, but they don't, I don't think I've ever had one of these embed in my skin. Like if I rub up against another, like a choya, or I think even a cactus barrel I fell on recently and I got prickly stuck in my hand. These don't really detach and stick in you. They just poke you. They stay pretty firmly on their branches, but these mostly grow on rocky slopes near water sources, so you're mostly going to see these in a wash. In fact, there's all kinds of dry streamlet little washes in this area that I'm camped in, which means I bet during the monsoon season there's lots of streamlets of water coming down here. But that's what this is. This is a Palo Verde, and yeah, it will prick you. It's not horrible. It's not as bad as some of the other prickly things out here. And there are a million little cactus like this. There's a bunch of different varieties of cactus that look kind of like this. They're round, they're tubes, there's the barrel cactus, the hedgehog cactus. There's just all kinds of them out here. And yes, they are very, very sharp. And yes, I have fallen on these. I have rubbed up against these, and they hurt. So you definitely want to avoid these. These are extremely sharp, and I think these will... Yeah, see, these break off. You see that? See how easy that broke off and stuck in my skin? And, you know, I mean, you just have to be aware of your surroundings, watch where you're walking. On my hikes, I often rub up against these, and you can see, I've got scratches on my arms. They drew blood. I was on a hike the other day. They actually drew blood, but no harm. There are no toxic cactus out here, so nothing out here is going to kill you. It's just going to poke you, and you might bleed a little bit. It's not the end of the world. But you might want to be aware that I did fall on I can't remember what kind of cactus it was in Utah recently, and it did get stuck in my hands. I think it might have been a little barrel cactus, maybe, or yeah, I think it was a little, or something like this. I can't remember. It was just a little one, and I got very, very, almost like hairline, or, yeah, almost like hairy, thin, like, making no sense again, things stuck in me, and they were really hard to get out. And there were a couple of bigger ones like these too that I was able to pull out, but the hair ones I was actually able to just brush off, and luckily nothing got stuck inside my fingers. See, that's the biggest concern. If you fall on something, are the little tips going to get stuck in your fingers or wherever you fall or bump into it, and you're not going to be able to get them out, and they're going to get infected and they're going to cause problems. So you basically just want to try to avoid them. Where I'm camped right now, they are, I mean, I have never seen so many variety of cactus, and the hiking is just absolutely beautiful. Even now in December, things are blooming. There's flowers. Some of the cactus are blooming. I mean, can you see behind me? There's little yellow flowers there. I have never seen so many different types of cactus in one place. It is absolutely beautiful. Right over there is a prickly pear. There are several... Let me see. You see that? There are several different varieties of prickly pear out here. There's red prickly pear and I don't know, all kinds, but that's a prickly pear. And I guess you can make stuff out of that. I used to drink prickly pear margaritas, one of my favorites. And I think that, can you see it? Is that a choya? There are at least a dozen different varieties of choya out here. Yeah, I can't point out every type of cactus out here. I'm not a botanist and a cactus expert, but I'm trying to point out to you at least what I have learned in coming down here the 3 years that I have been coming down to the desert. And, you know, the most dangerous ones, the choya, there's the teddy bear choya, and they call the jumping choya, which literally you brush past it like bear, and they jump on you. I think that was what Capone and I got in a fight with, were the jumping choya. And they literally do seem to just jump on you, and they're impossible to get off because they're 360 degrees of pricklies. The other thing to watch out for is sometimes the different cactus shed. And so for pets, not so much on these. I think mostly the cholla. They do tend to shed, and then they dry up, and then they break apart, and so then they get little pricklies that you don't see necessarily with the bare eye until you get one in your foot. And I shook my rugs out the other day. Thought it was perfectly fine out here because I'd been out here even barefoot. I threw my rugs out the rig the other day to shake them out, and I brought them in, and I had the little dried up, you know, multi-point pricklies on my rugs that I got caught in my feet as I was walking inside, and I had forgotten. Oh yeah, I remember this from last year and the year before. So don't throw your rugs out on the desert floor. You might want to put a tarp out, or, you know, just carry them out and shake them out and bring them back in, but don't lay them down because you will bring cactus inside, and there's nothing worse than walking inside in your bare feet and getting pricklies in your feet or your pet's feet. And so just watch your pets around the cactus that shed. And really, I think cholla is the worst that I can think of right now that shed. And they'll shed little ones that you necessarily won't see until you step on them or your pet steps on them. All right, and here we have an ocotillo. I don't know if you'll be able to see the whole thing. It's just shooting branches up in the sky, a bunch of them. And if you look closely, they do have, again, they have pricklies on them. Really sharp ones. These are pretty sharp. So again, though, these aren't going to bother you. They're not going to jump out at you. You're just going to need to watch when you're passing them, when you're hiking. They will scrape against you. And again, I don't know if it's an ocotillo, but you can see I found my scars from brushing into cactus out here on my hikes. But yeah, these turn bright green, and they do flower in the spring, but right now they just look like branches. Wow, they look really pretty with sharp things on them. So be careful of these. I don't know necessarily that these are going to be any harm to your pet. Pets don't normally, they have their thick coats of fur for one thing, so if they brush up against this, they're probably not going to feel it. The branches do dry up and fall off on the ground. So yeah, these are sharp. So if your pet comes sniffing around one of these, there's a chance they could step on those. I don't remember Capone ever having a problem with any of these. But that's an ocotillo. There's the flat leaf cactus. I'm not sure what those are. You know, dogs are pretty smart though. I mean, I've seen Capone walk through some pretty prickly stuff and come out okay. I don't know if he learned what to stay away from or not, but you know, I mean, I think there was one time he might have had some quills in his foot or something that I actually had to pull out. But again, if he's hurt, he'll tell me, and that would be an indicator that the next time I needed to be careful and avoid that place. You know, a little bit of pain is not a bad thing. Of course, we don't want our pets to suffer, but if they show a little bit of pain or discomfort, then that's information for us to use to prevent it from happening next time. That doesn't mean that, you know, we wrap them up in a bubble and never let them go outside. At least that was how that was my philosophy for living with Capone and letting him be as free as he could be. Everybody has to make that decision for themselves. Do they want to prevent 100% of pain and squash a dog's natural instincts to explore and want to know and sniff and be aware of their surroundings to cause them even 5 minutes of pain? And that's a decision I think that everybody has to make for themselves and for their pets. So my philosophy was to let Capone be free. He loved this life. He loved being able to get out and explore and have new things to sniff all the time. The result of that was in his last year of his life, every time we went to a vet, they said he was the healthiest 13-year-old they had ever seen. And that, you know, anyway, I don't want to get into Capone. But he was a very happy, very healthy dog. And I think part of that was because he got to live such a natural, free life. And even if that meant having a fight with a cholla cactus once and he was in pain for a half hour, in the end, I think that it was worth it. We learned from that, and we learned where to go and where not to go and what to avoid, and still he got to be free. All right, I think that covers all the cactus out here, all the prickly things that are out here that grow prickly so that they can protect themselves and survive in this what can be a pretty tough landscape. And we just need to be aware and do our best to avoid them. You want to avoid the cholla. Take a rest and show you what I bring with me on a hike in the desert. All right, so if you're going for a hike in the desert, what do you need to take with you? First of all, make sure you have plenty of water. I always take twice as much as I think I'm going to need, because oftentimes I think, oh, I'm just going to go for a little walk, and I end up exploring, and 4 hours later I'm just now wandering back into camp. So I bring, for this walk, I knew I wasn't going to be out more than an hour because I'm shooting, but I brought 2 liters of water. Whether you're hiking or not, when you're in the desert, you need lots of water. And that brings me to being in Arizona. The dump stations and the potable water stations for filling up your RV in Arizona are salty water. You're going to need to go someplace for drinking water for the desert. You can fill up your holding tank with the water that you get from potable water sources like dump stations, but most of the time that's not drinking water because of the saline content is so high you can't drink it. And you can basically, there are kiosks on the side of the road, and you can go maybe 25 cents a gallon and you can fill up either water jugs, or there's a, I can't remember the name of it, I'll put a link, I'll look it up. There's a health food store in Parker, Arizona that offers, I think it's 25 cents a gallon, fresh drinkable water, and you can fill up your RV, and that's what I've been doing. So 25 cents a gallon, I have a 40-gallon tank. It's $10 to fill my water with fresh water, and to me that's worth it. For one thing, I don't like using plastic jugs, and so I don't buy plastic jugs if I can help it. I would rather just fill up my holding tank with water that I can drink. So yeah, in the desert, it's really dry. Even when it's not hot, it's really, really dry here usually, so you're going to need to make sure you stay hydrated, drink a lot of water, and especially when the sun is out and when it is hot, and you may not realize it, but you need to stay hydrated, drink a lot of water. When I'm going out for a walk, or even just a walk, I highly recommend, no matter where you go, packing a few essentials with you, especially in the desert where it can be really dramatic terrain, and you can have changes in weather really fast. A storm can blow in, it can get really windy, and it's really a good idea to have some things on hand with you wherever you go. Okay, a couple other things I bring with me: a headlamp, okay, in case I get stuck out here at night, and make sure the batteries work. So this is my lightweight headlamp. I have the really nice one that I keep on my hook that's rechargeable, but this is lightweight, so this is what I carry in my backpack with me, really just for an emergency if I get stuck out here at night, or if I'm walking past dark, which happens. My personal satellite GPS tracker, and I use a Spot. I've had this for several years. It's what I use in the John Muir Trail, and you can set this up to notify an emergency contact with a custom message. It's just one way. You can't receive messages on this, but it also has an SOS button that you have to actually unhook there, and you can press that and it'll notify search and rescue. This is really nice because I don't always have an internet signal. When I do have an internet signal, I think, oh, you know, I can just call 911, but I don't always have a cell signal. So I always carry my Spot with me. I also like these. If you don't like a lot of water, these I use a lot on, again, when I hike, I use these a lot. And these are Noon tablets, Noon hydration tablets. But if you don't like water, these are awesome. You can just drop one in your water and give you flavor. There's not a lot of sugar in them. And anyway, I carry these because sometimes I do get sick of water. And my handy dandy Swiss Army knife, which broke actually, but this has everything on it. It's got scissors, it's got a knife, it's got a screwdriver, but this is just the one I carry with me, and it's just always good to have around. So I also bring, you know, I'm out here in short sleeves and shirt and shorts because it's warm out, but I always pack my down puffy jacket. Again, you never know what's going to happen. I could twist an ankle and get stuck out here overnight, and it gets cold in the desert at night, so you want to be prepared for that. Something could blow in, but it's always a good idea to bring something warm. I didn't bring a rain jacket. I mean, I'm in the desert. It's not going to rain today. Do bring a little base emergency kit, medical tape, dental floss. Dental floss. You can use dental floss for everything. Little cortisone. I don't know why it's just in there. Little sewing kit. This is my backpacking kit. You know, I just kind of throw it in the pack when I go. Waterproof matches, hand sanitizer. Yeah, new skin, sunscreen, and I use zinc oxide because that's the most natural sunscreen I could find. This is the stuff that leaves thick white goo on you, but I don't use it a whole lot. Oh, I usually wear a hat. I forgot my hat. You might also want to wear a hat and sunglasses. My fire starter for when I like to play survival Carolyn. And this is probably the most important, the emergency blanket. This is super lightweight, super compact. It's a really great thing to always have with you. For one, it'll keep you warm if you do get stranded out here, if you get hurt, if you get lost or whatever, and you do have to spend a night out here, this will keep you warm. I also like it because it's super reflective, and you can use it in an emergency situation if you need to get rescued. You can use it to draw attention to yourself because of the reflective property. You can put it in the sun and you can attract attention to yourself. So another thing I bring with me, don't laugh, this is my poop bag. It's a good idea to always carry this with you. I mean, you could be regular as hell and you could have already done your poopy for the morning, but you never know what's going to happen on your trail. You could be out for several hours, you could be out overnight, and leave no trace means disposing of your waste, all of your waste, in proper ways. Pack in, pack out. No matter what you bring out here, you need to pack it out. And that means your toilet paper too. Yes, you need to carry out your poopy toilet paper. And so what I carry with me is a trowel. And this, you know, you dig a cat hole 6 to 8 inches, you do your business in the cat hole, you leave only your business in the cat hole, you do not leave your toilet paper. I have wet wipes in here, I have toilet paper in here, so toilet paper and then wet wipes to clean up afterwards. You have an empty Ziploc with a big X on it, and that's where you put your dirty toilet paper, and you pack that out and you throw it away. You do not leave toilet paper behind. I know the argument is that it's biodegradable, why not? I don't know how many times I have gone camping, backpacking, hiking, and I have seen somebody's toilet out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody wants to see your toilet, and it takes a while for the toilet paper to decompose. It attracts animals, and it's just ugly and it's disgusting. I don't want to see your poopy toilet paper when I'm out for a hike. So please, please, please pack it out. It's not a big deal. You pack it out, you empty it in a toilet, and that's it. You know, it sounds disgusting to pack out your poopy toilet paper, but it's really not that bad. Somebody who spent 30 days on the trail, you get used to it. It's just poop. It's just poop. It's not a big deal. And so I do carry this with me in case I have to go while I'm on the trail. And of course, then you also have the hand sanitizer, so you want to use that. And my pee rag, instead of toilet paper, I use a pee rag. And this is usually I usually keep this on my belt loop. Okay, but yeah, instead of using a ton of toilet paper on the trail, I just use a pee rag, and then I rinse it out and wash it when I get home. And I keep it all in a stuff sack. You know, I mean, this is hazardous waste, so I keep it in a separate stuff sack. It's always in the same stuff sack, so I know what it is just by, you know, I don't want my Ziploc of poopy toilet paper just floating around my backpack and maybe coming in contact with my food. I always keep it in one place. All my toilet items stay in one place, so I always know what it is and doesn't contaminate anything else. The last thing that you need to bring with you, snacks. So my trail mix, I always bring my own trail mix, and I make this. It's got almonds in it, and it's got walnuts and pecans and dates and what else? Vegan chocolate chips and sesame seeds. So that's my trail mix that I always bring with me. I threw a couple honey packs in here. Honey packs are really good emergency food, full of sugar, full of energy. If you ever do get in an emergency situation, you know, this is just really lightweight, really easy to carry, and instant energy. So I have a couple of those, my Kind bars. So that's my backpack, and that's everything that I bring with me to hike in the desert. All right, let's talk rattlesnakes, because this is the #1 concern of everybody who comes down to the desert or is thinking about coming down to the desert. So here's the thing. I have been coming down here for 3 years. I've hiked thousands of miles all over rattlesnake country. I have never seen one. It seems to me that a lot of people get the idea that there are just predators lurking around every bush and every corner just waiting to attack you. And the way I look at it is I am hiking in their backyard. I'm hiking in their living room. And it is up to me to be responsible and respectful of the environment. And that means being an active participant in my activities out here, not just mindlessly wandering around, not thinking about the fact that I am in something else's territory. And so that means I am constantly aware of my surroundings. And in fact, most rattlesnake bites happen when people inadvertently step on them. And what's my #1 or #2 rule of being safe living in an RV, no matter what the environment is? Be aware of your surroundings. As long as you are aware of your surroundings, Watch where you go. You don't want to step on, bushes. Because sometimes snakes might be in there sunning. You want to be careful when you're around piles of rocks. You want to keep your ears open for the hiss. If you hear the hiss or the rattle of a snake, you know it's telling you to back off, and you need to listen to that and give it enough space. And just be aware of where you put your feet. And you might have noticed I'm wearing boots, and part of the reason I'm wearing boots is because it's really rocky out here and I need the ankle support. But a lot of people also like to wear boots because they feel like that's going to protect them from something that might try to attack their ankles. And if that makes you feel better, then great. Rattlesnake bites are not fatal as long as you get it treated within a certain amount of time. You can get an anti-venom. Yeah, the venom is poisonous, but it's not fatal. I don't know, 99 probably 0.9% of attacks by wildlife on humans are defensive. They feel threatened. They're surprised. Somebody sneaks up on them, or they're scared, or they're protecting their young. And again, as long as we take responsibility for being in their territory and be mindful about our presence here and being aware of our surroundings, I think that can go a long way toward protecting ourselves. There are about 11 different species of rattlesnakes in Arizona. They range from like 1 to 3 feet. In the cooler high desert climates, they do hibernate in the winter, and maybe that's part of the reason I've never seen one, because it is getting colder at night, so they could be hibernating in their dens. And I know a lot of people I've camped with and a lot of people I've hiked with have seen rattlesnakes, and they've never bothered them. They just step around them. My thing is that no, there are not predators lurking around every bush waiting to attack you. In fact, they probably view us as that way, that we're out here. What are you doing in my backyard? And they view us as a threat. And I think respect for our environment can go a long way towards staying safe, and a little bit of knowledge and awareness. And so, I don't know. Don't worry about snakes. Don't worry about a snake until it bites you. I guess is my advice. And then go see a doctor. I don't think anybody is going to come out here and be so far away from a doctor or a hospital that you wouldn't be able to get help before the venom kills you. All right. So yeah, there are rattlesnakes out here. I've never seen one, and I probably hike more than anybody I know, honestly. Yeah, I do. I hike more than anybody I know. And I've never seen one. Capone's never seen one. So don't worry. Be happy. Hike. Get outside. All right, and finally, let's talk about the number one thing that you really need to be concerned about with pets in the desert. You ready? It's probably not what you think. No matter where you are, you have to worry about coyotes. Yep. That is the number one threat, I believe, to your pets out here. I have heard stories about coyotes coming into camp and grabbing little dogs. And even when I lived in the Bay Area and I used to take Capone hiking in an area in a canyon, a local told me that they would send one coyote out to lure the dog away into the pack, where the pack would kill them. So coyotes are probably the number one thing that you really need to worry about out here. I've heard far more stories about coyote killings than I have rattlesnake killings or spider killings. And that means if your dog isn't under voice control, or if your dog is older. I mean, I have friends who have younger dogs, and the coyotes run from them, but I was always worried about that with Capone. Capone being an older dog, he was definitely prey for a pack of coyotes. So just keep your dog on a leash if your dog wanders off and doesn't come back. Oh, if your dog doesn't stay close by, if he tends to wander, if he explores, and you are concerned that he wouldn't be able to stand up to a coyote, then that's just really something that you're going to need to be aware of and take precautions to keep your dog safe from coyotes. We had a coyote in camp, actually, Capone and I, in Kofa, and I saw the coyote before Capone did, but he kept coming pretty close, and I was able to get Capone on a leash and get him inside. But they are out here, and I have seen far more coyotes and heard far more coyotes than rattlesnakes, and you're going to need to be aware of that when you have a dog, especially the little dogs. They just eat the little dogs for appetizers, so be careful of coyotes. Okay. All right, does that make you feel better about coming out to the desert? I hope so. I hope that alleviated a lot of the fears and concerns you had about living and surviving in the desert, both for you and your pets. And like I said, everything out here wants to avoid you as much as you want to avoid it. Oh, and that reminds me, I didn't talk about spiders. I don't know what lives out here, scorpions maybe. I've never had a problem with spiders either. The one thing that you do want to be aware of is not to leave your shoes outside. I have heard that sometimes they do sneak into your shoes for warmth and safety, so you don't want to leave your shoes outside. And short of that, if you're not out here cowboy camping, sleeping on the ground, rolling around in the bushes, slathering yourself with rattlesnake and spider food, I honestly think that it's not a huge concern. And again, you're never too far away from a hospital that you couldn't get help if you needed it. And just come out here, have fun, don't worry about the little things, and learn as you go. And the longer you're out here, the more you're going to realize that it's really not as scary out here as some would make you believe. And yeah, I mean, I just hope that helped. I mean, I feel like a broken record. I just keep saying, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And really, I think that's the best philosophy. Come out here, experience it for yourself, and realize that the incidences of bad things happen are 1 in a million, and you hear about them because they're so rare. But I gave you a lot of information today about what you do need to know about staying safe in the desert, as far as hydration and what the landscape looks like out here, and the cactus and the plants and everything that you need to be aware of for both you and your pet. I hope it helped a lot of people. Come down here, experience the desert for yourself, and experience all the beauty and wonder that it has to offer, and all the life that really is here, and the life that doesn't want to eat you. Okay? What does this say? Get outside. Worst case scenario, you get killed by a bear. I actually wish this says worst case scenario, you get eaten by a bear, but killed just sounds so awful. But yeah, come outside. Worst case scenario, the 1 in a zillion thing happens to you. Best case scenario, you have a wonderful time and you get to enjoy something new. All right, thanks for hanging with me today. I'll see you next time. In the meantime, be happy, be free, and be kind. Mwah. I'll see you soon.